All right, welcome back. So let's continue the coverage of section 2.5, which is on differentiation of implicit equations, or implicit differentiation for short. Now, before we get into that, we really have to go over what the difference is between functions and implicit equations. Now, a function is what we've been dealing with thus far in the class. And a function is really an explicit equation. And the definition of a function, in most basic terms, is where you have a graph where there is only one y value for a given x. So in other words, y is only a function of x. And in order to determine whether the graph of a function, the graph of an equation is a function, we can use the vertical line test. And you may have used this before in Algebra 2 or pre-calculus. But let me just draw a random function. So this is function y is equal to f of x. So y is equal to f of x. Now, I'm going to employ the vertical line test. And if I draw any vertical line, as long as there's only one value of y for a given x, then I can say that this is a function or an explicit equation. So starting over here at the left, I'm just going to draw a vertical line. So at this x value, there's only one y value. And I can keep drawing an infinite number of these vertical lines, and for every single x value there's only one y value. And so if this occurs for the entire graph, then I can say that this is a function. There's only one y value for a given x value. And I think I figured out how to erase the whole page. Okay, I think this will work. Yay. All right. So anyway, now let's look at implicit equations, which is what we're going to concentrate on in this particular section. So for implicit equations, y is not a function of x. In other words, there's going to be two or more y values for a given x. So let me draw you a picture of an implicit equation. So let's take something like this. Okay, so this graph comes from the equation y cubed plus y squared minus 5y minus x squared is equal to minus 4. It's one of the graphs in your book. Okay, now if I look at the vertical line test, out here on the left-hand side, at this one x value, there's only one y value. However, there are locations where there are two or more y values at a given x. And so if this occurs and it fails the vertical line test, we can say that this is not a function, because there's more than one y value for a given x. So anything that looks like this is where you can't just solve for y and put just y on one side and all the x's on the other side. Then this is what's called an implicit equation. So there's two important points here. One is we've got equations where you can't solve for y as a function of x, and the graph, the vertical line test, fails. So what I want you guys to do is, I'm going to write this down. So I want you to look at the graphs on pages 142 through 147, just so you can kind of get an idea of what the graphs of implicit equations look like. On page 146 and 147 at the end in the homework, there's a couple functions in there, and you can kind of see those. And actually, let me look at those. So if I look at page 146, hold on. All right, so if I look at page 146, and I look at number 29, the Witch of Agnesi, and actually this reminded me in class, there's actually a really interesting story behind the title of this, or the name of this particular graph. But for number 29, the Witch of Agnesi, this is actually a function, because as you can see, if you make vertical lines, there's only one y value for a given x, so that's a function. However, number 30, which is a cissoid, if you make a vertical line, there's two y values for a given x, so that's an explicit function. And if you look at numbers 31 through 38, looking at those, it's only number 35 which is a function. Everything else on this page is an implicit equation. Alright, so before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and, I've got a joke, but I've got to, how do I do this? Okay, so, yay, okay, so I'm going to try to put a joke in here and see if this works. Okay, so there's this Spanish magician, I'll give him a little magician's hat, and he's up on a stage. There's a bunch of people out here watching him, and the Spanish magician says that he's going to disappear on the count of 3. And so he gets up on stage and he's like, uno, dos, and then all of a sudden, poof, he disappears without a trace. Get it? It's a pun. Trace. Yeah. Hopefully it's slightly funny. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.